Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm coming to you with a brand new style of postings titled Question Time with Mantastic. So, as the title does imply, the object of this post and video is to basically have you ask me a variety of questions and I will answer them in a subsequent video/post. So, I'm well aware that my suggestion box on my website does not seem to work very well. It tends to shoot the email off to a different email address I don't use or check, so I sometimes don't reply there, so this is hopefully ways to help amend this, as well as highlighting different questions or topics that people might have in a more public manner. So basically the way this works is that you are going to basically comment on my post or subsequent video here, and you will have, in an ideal world, a very intelligent question to ask. Now, I may not necessarily reply to your comments directly on the video and post because that would kind of defeat the purpose of having the subsequent follow-up. So don't be alarmed or afraid if I don't necessarily address it. I might just give it a like or say thank you or something along those lines. It gives me a bit of time to also kind of consolidate my thoughts and give me something to do later on in the week, say during a slower period of time when pad content is not being released. So if you are trying to make a comment on my website, you can do so without a WordPress account, except you will just simply show up as anonymous or someone, and if you do, make sure you just give me some sort of signature behind your name saying like, thank you, Bob, or something like that. Conversely, with YouTube as well, if you are leaving a comment and you don't like your YouTube name, you can just leave some sort of other signature and I'll make sure I include that as part of the question response and the follow-up. You are also allowed to ask questions that are off topic, but you have to make sure they're at least respectful and not too personal, to be honest. And I'm basically just going to be copy-pasting all of the questions into the subsequent post. So what should you ask? Now, what you should ask should obviously try to be interesting and appeal to as many different people as possible. And because I'm basically going to be answering these questions in a very public manner, so what I want you to do is basically ask something that does not have overlap with another article, because if I've already addressed it very heavily in a different guide, there's no real point in just rehashing it. Obviously, if some sort of post is very outdated, then feel free to ask a question. Like, for instance, say you're asking about Awoken Pandora teams, and I wrote a guide about Pandora maybe half a year or more ago, and it's obviously become outdated. So if you do ask something about Awoken Pandora, it does make sense now. But the key to asking an intelligent question is more so asking whys, because saying like, what is the ideal raw dragon team? That's a very straightforward answer. It's not that impressive because you can technically just Google the answer to a certain extent. It's better to try and ask like the whys, like why does raw dragon function so well, or why is Neptune dragon going to be viable? Those sort of ideas, because those are things you can't necessarily Google. And some good questions are basically asking about like game meta, like how do you feel like the meta is progressing? Like, do you like the hard cross meta? Do you think it's going to last forever? Or how does a new evolution or buff or tweaking affect a certain monster? Or like things that are released in Japan that come in say a couple months, those sort of ideas. In addition, you can also ask questions about how to approach a certain mechanic or monster, because like let's say Zeus Hera is giving you lots of trouble. I can obviously help you and answer the most common and several different ways to approach it, because again, those may not be easily Googleable answers. So basically the idea is to ask questions that are not necessarily large enough to have their own posting response. Maybe if enough people say want a certain piece of information, I think it's interesting enough, maybe I'll do a subsequent separate post for that. But the idea is to just ask something I have not already covered. So what not to ask? Basically, like I said, don't ask questions that have direct overlap with current articles. Like I said, if it's an outdated article, you can ask about it, because I don't necessarily go back and update older postings because it's quite tedious sometimes and it may not necessarily help many people, but this is a great way to address that as well. However, you are allowed to like branch and build off an existing article. Like for instance, say the Raw Dragon article I posted. Basically, if I didn't cover all the necessary topics or nuances that you're curious about, you can branch off and ask like whys, because that at least adds on to the conversation. I don't want to like just have to say like just read the article. It's explained in like paragraph 4 or something. And what else you should not ask is box reviews, because this is not the place for it, because I'm not going to be looking at your box if you do a question for this type of posting. I'll help you out if it's inappropriate for team building on some of that respective article, but I'm not going to be looking at someone who says, hey, here's my box, look at it, make me a team. Like, to be honest, that's a little rude and a little insensitive sometimes. It's like, you didn't even put the effort to make your own team, so why should I put the effort on my part to do that? And this usually mostly occurs, at least I'd say, through my Facebook inboxing, because like some people say like my page, like, and then like 5 seconds later say make me a team, and I'm like, okay, that's nice, hello. But if you are wanting to do something, at least try and gain help for team building, what you can do is a more intelligent approach where you at least show you made the effort. Like, show me your team that you've used. Let's say like I have this Mary, or say like I'm using this mirror team, and I think this are good inherits, these are good subs. What do you think? Like, that is a much better question to ask, because that's fine tuning something, because that's what I can probably help you a little bit more, because I can say like, this is why this option is a little stronger than this. Conversely, saying this is my monster box, make me teams. So that's a way to do it. And lastly, I don't know why it's not showing here, but just don't ask about release dates, because to be honest, I have no idea when a certain card is being released. I'm just going to say soon, except if it's Raw Dragon, which is later. So if you are wanting to ask off-topic questions, you should start with like a brackets OT at the front, so I know it's not pad related. And again, if you do ask something off-topic, just make sure it's at least respectful and not excessively personal. You could ask like, what's my favorite color, what food do I like, or anything that you could think of that might be interesting to you. So basically, in conclusion, I encourage you to ask questions, because that's the purpose of this type of postings. And if this proves successful, and I feel like it is already successful on my website at least, I'll probably do this maybe on, say, a monthly basis as new questions come in, or maybe I can allocate certain questions to later on. It just depends. Like right now I've got at least 40-odd questions thus far on my website, and I feel with YouTube there's going to be more, so I'll see how it goes. But hopefully you can come up with something creative. I'll probably start putting this together towards the end of the week, so you do have time to get your questions in. So hopefully you have a fantastic day, and happy puzzling!